Everyone, welcome to this episode of Get Your Marriage On. I'm excited to have my guest today, Amberly Lambertson. She's a provisionally certified family life educator. She's working on her master's degree, and she has this blog called A Prioritized Marriage and an excellent Instagram also. Amberly is one of those rare gems that I've come across. She has a whole lot to say and a lot of experience and has a really unique message. So I'm really happy to have you on today, Amberly.
Thanks, Dan. I'm super excited to be here.
One of the things that draws me to like what you write about on your blog and in your emails and your Instagram is dating your spouse. And you have like this amazingly creative mind that like come out with like, you can pump out like hundreds of date ideas in like no time flat. Like, what's your story? How did you come up? Why did you start A Prioritized Marriage and what's your story?
Yeah, so A Prioritized Marriage actually started out as just like a personal journal blog when I got married. It used to be Life with Amberly and Joe. Joe is my husband. And so when we got married, I just started sharing our story and like things that we were doing and things that we were learning. And I kind of got to this point where I had another blog friend when I dove into like realizing that there was more to it than just journaling, that there were people who were like writing for strangers to read, right? That was crazy to me. I met a friend and she was sharing stories from her marriage and what she learned and how you could apply that into your own marriage. And I loved it. And so I started doing that. And kind of along the way, kind of mixed in there, I had started my associate's degree just before meeting my husband. I have a cosmetology license actually. And so I'd been working in the salon for a while and I decided I wanted to go back and get my associate's. So I started my associate's degree, getting my generals, met my husband, we got married, and about a year, well, probably about the time we got married, I was looking for classes I could take that interested me and could count as my electives for my degree. And I found a lot of classes that I was interested in were in the family studies field. So I just was like, I wonder what this degree is. And I started looking into it. And what initially drew me to the family studies program was, one of the career options for that degree listed on their like page they give you was to be a music therapist. And that's something that had always interested in me I was always interested. I can't say those words today. So I dove into the program and so we got married in 2011 and that was about the time I found the family studies program. And then I started my bachelor's in 2014 and somebody mentioned they wanted to be a marriage educator. And I was like, what is a marriage educator? Like I talk about marriage on my blog. I love relationships. I've always been like a hopeless romantic, cheesy chick flicks, rom-coms, love other people's stories, like love hearing those things. And so I started looking into that and I went from wanting to go into music therapy to family life education. And I was hooked. And so I was already kind of doing that on my personal blog. And I transitioned about that same time, turned my blog into A Prioritized Marriage and had my focus. And it just has naturally become my platform for educating couples and taking my education that I do in the community and putting it in an online platform. So that's how I got here.
What are some of those lessons that you learned early on in your marriage that you wanted to blog about and tell the world about?
Oh, so many things. Things like, one of the things I don't know if I necessarily learned this early on, but one of the things I recognized early on is like I talk about dating my spouse, is that we had no kids. We had all this time that we could go do whatever we wanted to. And we didn't take advantage of it. And so that's kind of how it's turned into a passion for me. I would share like those before it became A Prioritized Marriage, when it was a personal blog. I was sharing, oh, we went bowling tonight. Here's how we made bowling fun. Just sharing that as like a personal journal thing. And so noticing that those were the fun things that I wanted to share. And those were the fun things that people were like, oh, I really love that. And so things like having fun together and continuing to date each other and continuing to pursue each other like you did when you were dating, I guess. And just those things like communication and expectations. And I would share silly stories like, I don't know if you want a silly story, but one of my silly stories we still laugh about. My husband cleaned our vacuum one day and I came home that day and he was working later in the day and I was working earlier in the day. So I would be home for about 3 or 4 hours before he got home from work. And I went to clean the dishes, and there was this like spongy thing on our counter that had like a plastic ring around it. And I was like, it had a faucet on it. And I was like, well, I guess he just got like a new fancy sponge. I don't know. So I started scrubbing all my dishes with it. And I was like, this just doesn't really seem that effective. And when he got home, he was like, did you use this? And I was like, yeah, I was cleaning dishes, but it's not a very good sponge. And he just busted up laughing, and he laughed for like 10 minutes. And he finally told me, that's not a sponge. It's part of it's like a filter or something for the vacuum. And it's telling you the part that you're supposed to rinse off has the faucets on it. And I was like, how the heck am I supposed to know that? You left it on like the side of my sink, and I just thought it was a new sponge because he worked at Target at the time doing security. So I thought he just brought home something new. So just like silly things that taught us communication and those little things that like the importance of sharing what's going on and being on the same page, I guess.
That's great. About being on the same page. You talk about dating and keep dating your spouse. Why do so many couples tend to stop dating after they're married? What gets in the way?
I think one of the biggest things I think when couples first get married is they assume like, okay, I pursued my spouse, I chased them, I dated them, I got them, and now we're just living life together. And they forget that, or they don't realize that you have to keep doing all those things you were doing in the beginning of your relationship in order to continue that relationship. You don't hit like this perfection, we're going to always be awesome together when you get married. You have to continue progressing together, just like you're going to progress together in life, and you're going to, move from an apartment to a house, and maybe one day build your dream house, or you're going to start having kids and pursue new careers. Whatever it is that you guys are progressing towards together, you can be awesome partners in that. But you also have to remember that at the foundation of that is your marriage, romantic partnership. And if you don't continue to nurture, I'm going to combine them into words, nurture and nourish that relationship, you're going to be awesome partners. Maybe you'll be awesome business partners. Maybe you're like professional parenting partners, like you guys got that down. You're really good at doing house projects, whatever it is. But at the root of that, do you have that friendship, romantic relationship still there that you had when you first got married? If you don't, then you're going to I see couples that build this life together, and they get, something I'm studying in my master's is gray divorce. So it's a phenomenon we've seen, and actually the rates of gray divorce have doubled. So while the rates of divorce are going down in the United States, the rates of gray divorce are doubling. So our divorce rates are kind of staying stagnant, but it's because couples age 60 plus are getting divorced. And some of the research that I've done, a lot of them have said we've just grown apart, or we don't have anything in common anymore. They're not that person for me like they were when we first got married. And I have a lot of research I'm still trying to do, but I truly believe it's because you're not continuing to date each other and pursue each other and nurture that relationship that's at the core, the foundation of your family. And so you're not going to have anything left to enjoy when you get to that, end of retirement, and the kids are gone, and you can travel together and have fun together, and you have all this extra time together, and you live in your dream house. You're not going to be able to enjoy that together because you don't have that.
What are some practical tips for our listeners? Like, this episode is going to come out right before Valentine's Day, and which is often people associate with going on a date with your spouse or significant other on Valentine's Day or around there. What are some specific tips you can offer them that have kind of gotten into this rut of they're drifting apart, they're really not really nurturing that relationship? What can they do to like overcome those obstacles?
So just in general, I can share some Valentine's specific things too, but just in general, I always tell couples to start to look for the things your spouse is doing and show gratitude for those things. Because I think we start to take each other for granted. We just assume like my spouse always takes out the trash. They're going to do that every single week. And it's more of like you didn't take out the trash, if it doesn't happen, rather than hey, thanks for always taking out the trash. those are things that like I realize when my husband will go away for a week for like a scout camp or something. I'm like, oh yeah, the garbages. And I have come to take it for granted that it's something I don't even think about. Those little things like providing for your family or making dinner or putting the kids to bed, whatever those little things are or who they are, even just who they are at their core, who they are to you as a spouse, you can show gratitude to them for those things. Like, thank you for being such a patient spouse and not biting when I try to fight or something like that. Thanking them for those little things. And I think starting to notice those things, not only will they feel more appreciated and seen and valued in the relationship, but you will also start to see more of the positive side of things. And you will start to, like, in your head, feel more appreciation and love towards your spouse for who they are, as your spouse, as your partner, as your best friend, rather than taking those things for granted. So that's one of the big things I always tell couples is start to look for those positive things, start to look for those things, and just say a simple thank you. A lot of people are doing gratitude journals right now. You could keep a gratitude journal for your spouse or send them gratitude texts, but try and find, like you do for a gratitude journal, 3 things to be grateful to your spouse for every single day. And you'll start to see the positive rather than the negative. Because I think when we get into that rut, a lot of couples start looking for those things that are negative or those things that they don't like or those things that they don't appreciate in the relationship anymore. But shifting your focus can help a lot.
Really does grow greener where you water it, doesn't it?
Yes, for sure, for sure.
What about if you have young kids? Those are really hard times to go out on a traditional date. What are your tips for people like that?
Yeah. One thing this sounds really funny to say, but one thing I've really loved about 2020 and the restrictions we've all had on going out and even just like hiring a babysitter. I can maybe go out, but I can't hire a babysitter, so then we can't go out. Is that couples are embracing at-home dates and that families and couples are looking for those different ways to connect with each other. I think at the beginning of this, when it was spring, it was March, we saw families outside playing all the time and doing all these things because you were stuck together all the time. You had to find things to do to change it up. So we have 2 young kids. We have a 5.5-year-old and a 4-year-old. They're 16 months apart. They keep us very, very busy. And so that's, I think, when we've started to value date night, even if it's just date night at home, even if it's just 10 minutes to sit on the deck outside in silence, cuddling together after the kids are in bed and not climbing all over us or yelling at us. And we can actually like hear ourselves think and hear each other talk. So couples with young kids, I encourage them to find like a daily connecting ritual. So something you can do every day to connect, not just to sit down and go over the to-dos or to sit down and talk about the things that happened during the day, but to sit down and truly connect and like, hey, what's going on with you right now? What's like a favorite song you have right now? Is there a song you hear on the radio that you're like, yeah, and you turn it up, like you wish it would play more and more? Just trying to get to know your spouse like you did when you were dating, because they change and preferences change. I mean, my favorite color is always going to be purple, but I have a different favorite song depending on the day. I really do. So my spouse, what did you listen to today? Or what is something funny that happened to you today? Not just, oh, this is how work was, and this is what I did today, and here's the 5 chores that I got done. Something I always find myself doing is telling my husband the things that I did during the day, because this happened to us the other day. I had the kids help me clean up a room. We vacuumed it. We cleaned up vacuumed the couch, put all the blankets away, all the things, dusted it, sanitized it. And my husband got home and he was like, did you text me this today that this room got cleaned? Because it looked totally worse than it did when he left that morning. And I was like, I should have taken a picture because I promise it was clean today. But I'll find myself going through like, today I did this and this and this and this. I know it doesn't look like I did, but I promise I did something while you were gone. Or these are my work things I got done. Or he'll tell me about some frustration from work. So finding that time to connect more, I like to say more intimately, like getting to my definition of intimacy is the like, know, and trust you have in a person is the intimacy you're building with them. And so finding that, going into that intimate space of your relationship rather than just keeping it surface level or like business partnery. So having a connecting ritual, finding time for date night, those are like my two big things that I suggest for people who have kids, because it's exhausting and it's crazy and it's hard to get out and it's hard to do anything. So
Yeah, I have a silly connecting ritual that my wife and I do. We both bought electric toothbrushes with the same model. So our thing is we brush our teeth together at the same time. We have to hit the button at the same time. And it runs for 2 minutes and it ends at the same time. So
I love that. I think, and those are the things I love hearing other people's connecting rituals, because they're so simple and sometimes they seem so silly or like, okay, but it really is something that like you come to look forward to that brings you together. Even you're just brushing your teeth, right? You're probably not talking to each other while you brush your teeth. It's like impossible, but you're doing it together and it's something you come to expect. And yeah, I love that a lot.
about the other end of the spectrum, more on the creative dating side of things.
Okay.
Valentine's is coming up. Can you give us some Valentine's Day date ideas for listeners that want to do something, but they really have no ideas?
Yes. Okay. So I came up with a few. I came up with 4 things from like, I wouldn't say it's like an intense date, but this year is very different for Valentine's. And when you have kids and are in that stage of life, I think it's different for Valentine's anyway, because it's hard to get a babysitter because a lot of, family is doing their own Valentine's thing, or babysitters are booked way in advance. But this year is way different. Last year, I remember for Valentine's Day, we did our celebration the week after. We went to a symphony and we had an overnight date. It is not going to happen this year. So one of my things, and I'm in charge of Valentine's this year, so I'm planning on doing this myself, is to set up a romantic candlelit dinner at home. So set the table with your nice dishes, put a tablecloth on, set up some candles, some fancy drinking glasses, dim the kitchen lights, and turn on like a romantic playlist to set the mood, right? And then you can make dinner as extravagant or as easy as you want it to be. So one year we just ordered sandwiches from our favorite sandwich shop and then some chocolate covered strawberries, and we put them on our fancy plates. And you can make takeout super fancy. It can be whatever you want it to be. It could be a sub sandwich, it could be tacos, like it could be something so simple, but it's the setup that's going to make it like romantic, right? But whatever you guys want it to be, you can make frozen food, or a lot of times stores will have like pre-prepped food, right? Like a lasagna that's freshly made in their bakery or wherever, and you just pop it in the oven. Or you can spend time together in the kitchen making a full meal before you sit down to eat, which I think could be super fun if that's something you want to do, And then something I wanted to suggest is if you have kids, plan it for a time when after they're in bed. If you can't have like a babysitter or send them to grandma's or something, a time after they're in bed, or set them up with their own like fast food meal or a pizza picnic or something, Lunchables they'd even be happy with, right? In the other room, and have them have like some coloring activities and a fun movie that they're watching, and then you enjoy your date. And you're still close enough that if there's an emergency, you could take care of it, but they're occupied and you're able to focus on each other. So that is my plan for Valentine's Day this year. You guys will see it on Instagram. I'll share it. It's going to happen. Another thing that I thought would be fun, because I looked, and I think Valentine's Day is on a Sunday this year. So taking the day off together, but taking the day after Valentine's Day off. So planning ahead, taking the day off from work. The kids will probably have school. My kids would both be in school only for just like a few hours in the afternoon, but it's still time. And then you can either hang out at home and like enjoy takeout and take a bath together and cuddle together, watch a show, like just enjoy the silence. Or you can spend the day out on an adventure and do like a day date, and it'll be less busy too, because everyone else will be in school or at work, because you're taking the advice of me and taking the day off, and everyone else is going to be boring at work, right? So then you can do like a date night out or a date night without the kids. And then I just had 2 simple ideas. So something I've done, I think I've done this 2 years. I don't know if I did it last year, but I wrote down 14 things that I love about my husband, or 14 reasons I loved him. So like things he does or reasons I love him or whatever, 14 of them. And then I looked up how to schedule texts on my phone, and I scheduled those 14 texts. So I scheduled those 14 reasons as a text an hour apart on Valentine's Day. So while he was at work, every hour he was getting an I love you because text. So that's fun. And then I thought this was really fun. This is an idea from a post that I have that's like 14 cheesy ways to celebrate Valentine's Day or something, but to call in a radio dedication to your spouse. I don't know if this is the thing when you were like a teenager, or even like people would call in a radio dedication, right? Like, I know my crush is going to be driving to school at this time, and this is the station they listen to. And you call in a radio dedication, share why you love them, and then dedicate the song to them, right? So I just thought that could be a really fun, cute and cheesy, simple way that you could celebrate your spouse this year. So those are my 4 really simple, well, not simple, but 4 extravagant to simple ideas. How's that?
That's great. I love those ideas. Wow. Any other strategies for working with babysitters?
There's so many things. My nieces, so my kids' cousins, babysit for us. So depending on how things look in our area right now, sometimes we feel really comfortable inviting them over to babysit because they're in our circle already. But one thing that I've made sure to do is to book babysitters ahead of time. So even if you don't know exactly what you're going to do for a date night, I try to, at the beginning of the month, text and say, hey, here's the dates and times that I need babysitters. Would that work for you? That way you're not like 3 days before Valentine's Day calling a babysitter, or 3 days before your date trying to find a babysitter. Because I find those are the times when you are like rush, like you're not going to be able to find a babysitter, right? Everyone's taken. You can also do like a swap with friends. So a lot of our friends have kids about the same age as us, or people in the neighborhood. And I know people who have scheduled like babysitter swaps on a regular basis, and they'll have, however many families as part of it. And 1 week, one family will have all the kids over, and the rest of the weeks they're out on a date while a different family has the kids over. And that's a really easy and like budget friendly way to do it, because you're not paying each other. You're just each taking a turn to do it. And everyone gets way more date nights in that way, because you get like, depending on how many people you have in your swap, you can have, every week except one have a date night out. And those are some of my 2 best babysitter tips, I would say. We also take advantage of grandparents being around, and we'll have grandparents tend, or when grandparents are like, hey, we want to take the kids and do this, we're like, sweet, we'll go to a date night. But I know not everyone has that in their tool belt of babysitting.
Stage where my oldest is 15, then just under that, she's just turned 14. So they're old enough and responsible enough that we can leave for a few hours and the house doesn't really burn down. So it's like awesome to have built-in babysitters. But our challenge is we come back from date night and we want to continue our date, but getting from the door to the bedroom is a landmine. Like, any suggestions or tactics you can offer to help with continuing the date?
So that's something that we even kind of like, we'll try to stay out until we know that the kids will be in bed, right? And we'll still have times where we'll come home and one of us has to take the babysitter home, right? One of our nieces is old enough that she drives, and so sometimes she'll drive herself home, and so I pay her an extra $5 because it's just like a quick and easy, like, here's your money, see ya, and we can continue our date. But there is like that gap, and so I think you have to have, it's all about like communication and expectations, like communicate it ahead of time and almost make it like part of your date night ritual. Like, when you come home, do you put the kids to bed and then, do you know what I mean? Because if you have that babysitter swap thing, then you're not going to come home to kids being in bed, because you're going to have to go pick them up from someone's house wind them down, and put them to bed. So there's going to be a huge gap. So I think you have to decide ahead of time that, hey, after the kids are in bed and, you know, we're going to ignore the mess of the dishes or the toys or whatever, or we're going to do a quick 15-minute pickup because I'm not going to be able to continue date night if I know there's a mess downstairs. Whatever that has to look like for you, I think that's key. And then knowing that, okay, and then we're going to continue our date. So here's what we're doing. You know, we're going out to dinner and we're going to rollerblade or something. I don't know if that's the first thing that came to my mind. And then we're going to come home, put the kids to bed, wind them all down, and then hurry and do a quick pickup. And then we're going to watch a movie and, you know what I mean, continue our date. So you have to have that planned out, I think. Otherwise, it's just, you know, one person's like, okay, date's over, starts cleaning the house, and the other person's like, okay, hurry and take the babysitter home, and I come home and my spouse is cleaning the house and I'm ready to continue date night. Do you know what I mean?
Plan.
Yeah. Communicate and plan it.
Tell us, so you're the date idea queen. Tell us like 3 more great creative date ideas.
Yeah. Okay, so these are 3 of my favorites. They can be done at home. They can be done on the town. They can be free. They can cost as much money as you want. One of mine that we did once, I remember this date vividly. We were in our first apartment. My husband had just gotten an iPod for Christmas. And so he put his whole entire music library, like all of his CDs, you know, put them on iTunes. This was like 9 years ago. People were still very much doing this on an iPod. Put all of his CDs on iTunes, and then we laid on our bed for like an hour and just went through our music libraries together. And we compared like the most random albums that we had in common. He was like, oh, this was like a song I always listened to, or did you know the story behind this song, or this was my first album. And so I think it's something you can do, and it's something super easy now because most people just have it right on their phone, right? Your music library, you just bring some headphones, or you can listen to it just outright. It can happen in the car while you're on your way to a date, or like a scenic overlook. You can stop and dance in a parking lot to your favorite songs. You can do it on your couch. You can do it in your bed, like anywhere you are. You can have this music library date and just like, what's your most played song? What are your favorite songs? Like, what was your first album you picked? What was like, I don't know, any sort of things. And you can spend so much time going through we seriously spent like an hour and a half just like looking through each of our music libraries. And then we just put them on shuffle and just sat there and talked. And it wasn't a planned date. It just kind of happened, but it's something I remember very vividly from like 8 or 9 years ago still today. So I think that can be fun. And I think it could be a fun way to get to know your spouse too, because like I don't know if you know who Billy Gilman is. He was like a big thing back when I was in junior high and high school. He was like this 12-year-old boy singer. He actually resurfaced on The Voice a couple of years ago. But my husband and I both had like multiple of his albums. I obviously had a lot more because I had a little crush on Billy Gilman. But my husband had, and I was like, how do we have these albums in common? Like we had 2, he's this most like random obscure person, and we both had 2 of his albums. So it's just a fun way to get to know your spouse more. Another thing I think can be fun is taking a trip down memory lane. So planning, like a lot of people will revisit their first date, like recreate your first date, right? But you can do other things like go to the town where you met if it's different from where you live, and spend the day like eating where you used to eat, doing some of the activities you loved doing together, recreating some of your dates. I have a friend who has a special overlook place that's in downtown Salt Lake, and they go every year. They go to this overlook place and they bring food and they sit and talk, and it's part of their story, right? So maybe there's like a park you always went to study, or we have a park we always went to and sat on the swings and talked at night. So I kind of thought about like, what would this look like for us? We'd probably go on a walk around the town we both grew up in, because we did that a lot when we were first dating. Go to the park and swing, and then grab dinner from our favorite restaurant near like our first apartment. And then maybe we'd watch Harry Potter at the end of the night, because we watched I don't even remember how many movies were out when we were dating in 2010. I know not all of them were out, but we watched all those movies together because my husband had never seen them or read the books. And that just felt like a crime to me. So doing simple things like that take you back to, like, I think that's kind of how we were talking about getting out of that rut. That's a really good date to take you back to where you were at the core of your relationship and bring those memories and those feelings and everything flooding back and kind of fall in love again together. Then my last idea I had was I create a bucket list for date night every year. So it's like, what are the restaurants we keep talking about going to? What are some of the activities we always want to do and never do? What are the seasonal activities we missed this year and want to make sure we do this year? Or something that other people went and did on a date that looked fun to us that we want to do. Like, I don't know if my husband's going to go for this one, but at the beginning of quarantine, everyone was, going and doing, like, putting a table in the back of a truck or on the side of the car in the parking lot and doing takeout dates, right? Like, right there in the parking lot. I want to do that so bad. Don't know if my husband will go for it. He might think that's embarrassing, but I want to do it. So things like that, they can be extravagant dates. Like, one year we went on a moonlit lift ride in the middle of the summer. Another year we rented electric bikes. Those ones are a little bit more expensive and maybe not like a one-time thing, but not an all the time thing. So just creating a bucket list together and crossing off like a bucket list item or something you always wanted to do together.
So Amberly, in this podcast, we talk a lot about sex and intimacy. How does dating your spouse and prioritizing your marriage lead to deeper intimacy and a great sex life?
So I personally believe that when you take the time to connect on an emotional level with your spouse and have fun together on a regular basis through things like date night and connecting rituals and those things we've talked about, and when you're taking that time to focus on your marriage and show your spouse that you care each day and that they're not just like a thing on your to-do list, that hold hands with my spouse, check, got it, you're setting yourself up for deeper intimacy. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but intimacy, I had a professor once tell me that intimacy is the like formula for intimacy is time plus togetherness plus talking. So spending time together, talking and getting to know each other. And I kind of said that it's your like, know, and trust of a person is how I feel the intimacy is. You have this affection for each other, you know each other really well, and you trust each other, you feel comfortable together. And so that date night and all those kinds of things set yourself up for that deeper intimacy, which then allows you to connect on a deeper level when it comes to your physical intimacy. And you and I were kind of talking about how I think it's kind of a joke out there, right? That I don't know, what do they say? Like,
do the dishes.
Chocolate. Yeah, doing the dishes. Like, chocolate, giving your wife chocolate doesn't lead to sex, but doing the dishes will probably, sorry, gotta let my dog out. Go ahead. But it's not necessarily something like that. It can, but it's something showing your spouse that you care. Like I said, it can't just be like okay, I took you on a date night, check. And this is what I get. And I think we see that on, like, I don't know, they say it in like movies and books and whatever, like, I paid for this dinner, you owe me type of thing. And that's not how it is. It's not like an exchange like that. It's part of your relationship. And so intimacy is so much more than the physical side that we think of automatically. I think a lot of people think intimacy equals sex, and that's not what it is. And so doing those things like taking your spouse on regular dates and making it a relationship rather than a to-do list is going to lead to that deeper intimate connection and, in the end, better sex, I think.
That's great. The Intimately Us app has a ton of date ideas within it. Where else can people go to find really good date ideas?
So I think people always search Pinterest. Like, if you search Pinterest for like at-home dates or winter dates or whatever, that's going to come up. I run a Facebook group, and that's something I see people popping in all the time. Like, what are you guys doing for date night? Or I have an anniversary coming up. Tell me like some good anniversary date night ideas. Looking for specific ideas. And then, like we've mentioned, I have tons of date night ideas on my website and over on my Instagram as well. I have lists that are like based on season, like fall, winter, spring, summer. There's based on different holidays, your season of life. So there's some that are like date ideas for couples after the kids are in bed, like things like that. Okay, so I have like at-home date night ideas are something that's my personal favorite. Because we had, our youngest was a preemie, and so we started doing lots of at-home date night ideas during cold, flu, and RSV season. And so it's been fun to see everyone embracing the at-home date night this year. I share really simple date night ideas and then more like creative and in-depth ideas. And I don't know if we talked about this yet, but I have a book, Prioritizing Date Night in Your Marriage, where I've put together over 300 date night ideas, and they're written out similar to the way that I've shared date night ideas so far, like the Valentines date night ideas, where it gives you like a few different ways you can do it. So we talked about like having a romantic candlelit dinner at home, and if you have kids, here's how you can do it, and these are your options for food. Like, I try to give you a bunch of different ideas so that you can find something that fits your situation specifically. And that's what I try to do with my date night ideas. So you're not just getting fall date night ideas, plan the leaves together. Like, you have a full date night idea to make it something that's going to connect you and deepen that relationship and be fun and something creative that you're doing at the same time. So I have lots, but I also share lots from other people, and I love the date ideas that are on the Intimately Us app and all those kinds of things. So,
well, Amberly, as we wrap up this interview, any last minute tips or tricks you can offer couples on how to really deepen their intimacy?
Yeah, I think just remembering that intimacy isn't just sex, that it's not just that physical side of your relationship, that it's everything that goes into it. I talk about how there's different types of intimacy. There's like your financial intimacy and your emotional intimacy, and I think they call it recreational. There's another word for it too, but like the fun things that you do together. And so it really is that like togetherness and that like, know, and trust you're building of each other. And by going on date nights and asking your spouse those questions, like, what's your favorite song right now? Like, is there a song that came on the radio today that you like would play over and over again? Those types of things, those are the things that are going to bring you closer and deepen your intimacy, and then get you to that next level when it comes to physical intimacy as well.
Great. Thank you again. This is Amberly Lambertson. You can find her at aprioritizemarriage.com and on Instagram at aprioritizemarriage.
Thanks, Dan.
All right. Catch you again.